And now, with the sudden language change to English, the time has come to begin the conference program, and it is my great privilege to announce our first keynote speaker. He is CEO of Kolab Systems, and he is the founding president of Free Software Foundation Europe, and has been president until 2009. And he will talk about experiences in doing business using free software. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Georg Greve.
Dobar dan. Unfortunately, I don't speak your language well enough that I have to resort to English. I could also do this in German, but perhaps English is the better choice. So thank you very much for the kind introduction and the invitation. And I'm going to talk to you today a bit about Kolab. As you've heard, I've been in this community for a while. And Kolab is the one thing that I have dedicated my entire being to for the past 3 to 4 years now. And you will perhaps see why. And I've chosen, perhaps a bit daringly, our internal motto in the company, which we generally try to apply it to everything we do in Kolab. We think we should do it right or not do it at all. Because we actually want to solve the problem. You will maybe see that in 1 or 2 places. So let me try this. Yes. So very briefly, what is Kolab? It is a communication and collaboration solution. So it does all the things that you all think have perhaps been solved a long time ago, but actually once you look at the details, perhaps not quite so. So what Kolab does is emails, contacts, calendaring, it does tasks, and it does also file cloud. It does all these things on web, on the desktop, and on the mobile, and it does so knowing that people are either online or offline. So we provide all the functions also in fully offline capabilities, and we do so not just for individuals, which is a much easier problem to solve, but also for whole groups and very complex organizations as well. The background of Kolab is actually a long time ago, so way before I got involved. It's with the German Agency for IT Security. It's part of the Ministry of the Interior. It is the Bundesamt für Sicherheit in der Informationstechnologie, who in early 2000s needed a solution that they could use for these purposes, but they needed to be able to trust it. And they, even back then, were clueful enough to define trust as something they could audit. They could understand that had to be fully open, both open source in the sense I can study it, but also free software in the sense that I have the control. And it should be fully open standards based. They saw nothing in the market whatsoever, so they tendered a solution. Please develop us something that does this on those principles. A group of 3 companies won that tender and developed what then became Kolab, and that is used in the BSI until today on 500 desktops. Kolab is therefore from its root already very security focused, and it has a very unique combination of properties, which is that it's a purely free software solution. It is only free software. There's no neo-proprietary, no open core anywhere, and it never has been, from the start. And it's extremely open standards based because on the standard you can create the value and you can get some of the additional values that follow from this, such as an extremely modular approach. You can replace by design every component with something else. So you can evolve the solution even in its components and parts. It is incredibly scalable and has a whole lot more to offer. I'm not going to go into all those details. So why does Kolab exist? What makes it important? And it's essentially, it's about the economy. Because strategically speaking, and myself being in the free software community for a very, very long time, we had solved some problems very well, Some problems more or less, and some problems not at all. So we have the whole operating system side pretty much covered, right? The data center we own as a community. I mean, there's no one that can do this better than us. But once you go to what people have in their hands, to the actual desktop, no, the desktop is not going to go away, and not for a while. Yes, the mobiles are entering the space, and they're replacing some use cases, but not all of them, and they never will, or at least not for the foreseeable future. So once you go to the desktop, you have 3 applications, in my experience, that determine whether a migration succeeds or fails. One of them is the browser. I mean, you couldn't, work without a browser. Impossible. The browser, though, we have pretty much covered. I mean, we have Firefox, right? We have Chromium. We have a whole lot of other projects. So I think we have that one pretty much narrowed down and solved. We have the Office, where we have, OpenOffice, LibreOffice. They're not perfect, but if you know how to deploy them and what to do and how to structure your policies around them, they solve the problem. And they're evolving fast. So the problem was partially solved, and there was a group working on it. But the one thing that we had not, as a community, tackled was the whole groupware realm, as it is also called, this communication collaboration technologies. And that is where a lot of the migrations that I have seen over the past years failed. Because if you cannot solve that problem, everything rolls back. Your entire strategy falters. And to me, that was a vulnerability that, to the free software world, was crucial to solve. That is one reason why Kolab was what I thought was important. The other one is the society. This, of course, being the Tower of Babel. Point being here, I think this image works for a couple of reasons. One, it shows us what we can do as humans when we collaborate. We can build things that are much larger than any of us individually could do, but it also shows the dangers of fragmenting communication. And it shows how important networking effects are in how our society works. So we needed a technology that actually solved the need for communication and collaboration for everyone. For everyone, to me, meant it had to be 100% free software. There's no other way to solve this problem sustainably. So that's why Kolab is important. That's why I'm passionate about it, and why I have decided to give it my all for so long now. So who makes Kolab? Who exchanges Exchange and occupies Outlook? That is largely the Kolab community. So Kolab is a free software project, a free software community around kolab.org, but it is also very upstream focused. We work with all the various upstream projects that build technologies which we in some way build into Kolab, and what then is released as a Kolab edition, ultimately. But this is where it all happens. It all happens in the open, all the way down to specifications which we discuss in public, ideas where we think about how to solve this problem, where we, even our internal processes are public. Entire Git repository that we have is public, for good reason. But if it's the economy, this isn't very satisfying for an institutional user, let's say. Governments, companies, they all want someone who says, all right, that's all fine and dandy, the technology is great, I get why this is fantastic, but I need someone I can call when I have a problem. And in order to solve that problem, we created a company around this. So Kolab Systems, headquartered in Zurich, which is where I am. In 2010, we established it there, is essentially the company that gives you the professional services and facilitates the ecosystem around the solution. We built this into a company group, so with other companies that have expertise that we wanted to bring into Kolab, from Qt desktop expertise to security expertise. So the whole group has about 130 people, and of these, 20 right now work on Kolab. The map is where you have people working in our group on the various aspects. We are partners with Red Hat, SUSE, who are the two enterprise platforms really in this field, and also with IBM. Our business model as a company is very similar to what you will see with Red Hat or SUSE. So it's software subscriptions, updates, and services around this. Also training and so on and so forth. What is important to us, there is no proprietary component also in the enterprise edition. None. The difference is in life cycles, supports, guaranteed updates. That is what our customers pay for because they need to be able to deploy this in production and know that the security fix is there next day. That is what we provide. But there is no proprietary component. It's 100% free software, even in the enterprise edition. And our local partners through which we deploy this typically are either ASPs or ISPs because we have this as a multi-tenant installation. We can scale this up to like hundreds of thousands, millions of users if you want, and have the different boxes for the individual customers. It's integrators that service larger groups, and it's service providers of any sort locally. So enough about the surroundings. So how does Kolab work? If you're not technical, I apologize. But if you're technical, maybe you'll find this interesting because this is a slide I can literally talk about for half an hour. Don't worry, I won't. What you see here is the schematic diagram of a typical Kolab server. And there's a bunch of things that you will find in here that highlight or explain or demonstrate some of the points that I've just made as well. One is every single of these boxes that you see here could be on one server together with all the other boxes, could be on an individual server, or could be on any set of servers, even in any set of data centers. You can cluster and distribute all of this to your liking, and we've done that. The front row is all the Apache or Nginx servers with the various web-facing applications such as the web client. You have CalDAV, CardDAV, and WebDAV. You have ActiveSync for the mobile platforms and so on and so forth. And of course, you also have an administration panel which also sits on that web-facing, if you want, side. What's interesting here is in that gray box, nothing works with escalated privileges, ever. All of these services only ever run with the privileges of the user that is currently logged in. That's one of the areas in which we are very security conscious. We make sure that we use the lowest level of privilege possible to do something. So even if you capture a web server, what you get is the active session, or sessions if you manage to get the whole thing, never more than that. All those lines that you see are all open standards protocols. We are extremely open standards focused. That means not only can you distribute this over the network, you can also secure this over the network. Every one of these lines can individually, and in fact is in quite a few setups, hardened with full TLS all the way to perfect future secrecy and so on and so forth. The whole PFS thing you can have in there. So even an attacker that sits within your data center on the network could not actually see the traffic between those boxes. I mean, they see that there's traffic, but they don't understand what it is. The heart of it all is an IMAP server. It's always an IMAP server. What people often find strange when they first see Kolab is, where's the database? Well, it's the IMAP server. We use the IMAP server essentially as a not only SQL database. Because it scales really, really well, its ACL, so its access control lists, are typically very, very hard and well debugged because it's the one thing that an IMAP server needs to solve really well. And it allows you to store all the data types that you need if you make use of the RFC 5464 standard for IMAP, which allows you to say this box is a calendar, is a task list, is a file store, is whatever you want. And then for the bits that are actually relational, where you say, okay, these are the bits that we want to speed up, you can hook in a SQL cache that is used by the web-facing applications that then only does the relational bits, nothing else. It also means that you get all the benefits of IMAP, all of them, which include things like delayed expunge. So when you have a backup scenario, 95 to 98% of the backup need cases are someone accidentally deleted a file and notices the next day. It's usually not longer than a day or maybe a week. If you have a delayed expunge of a week set to your installation, you have all of them covered because you can unexpunge that individual message. If you have to do an actual restore from backup, you can restore individual objects, not roll back whole databases, and try to pull out whatever you need. You have a lot of auxiliary benefits from IMAP that are not obvious, but once you start running a Kolab server, you start to treasure quite a bit. Oh, and by the way, you can synchronize two Kolab servers fully on the data level through IMAP sync. Any IMAP sync tool will work, which is quite nice. And then the directory service, of course. We made Kolab in a way that specifically we can integrate into virtually any directory service out there. By default, we use the strong role-based ones. So the 389, the Red Hat directory service, those are the ones that we typically deploy, but you can use this with OpenLDAP, with Sun Directory, with Oracle Directory. I mean, just because we could, we've even once integrated it natively into Active Directory from Microsoft. It works because we have minimal dependency on LDAP schema in what we do. And then you have a bunch of other components in here. I mean, you have, of course, a mail flow stack with spam filtering. What's interesting is the Wallace module, which in fact allows you to manipulate the mail flow in any way you need, including for individual messages deciding whether they should go out or not, or whether they should be rerouted or other things. And you have a Kolab daemon which holds it all together. It listens to the directory service to see whether new users are created, creates the mailbox for them or renames it or things like that. And it exposes an API that is essentially JSON over HTTP, so it's RESTful. I'm not sure it fully meets the formal definition, but it essentially feels like a RESTful interface, which allows you to control your Kolab server from any administration panel that you have. So you can easily integrate this anywhere, as long as you can do JSON HTTP. And it's on the data level, all based on XML again. So the actual payload in the IMAP server is stored in XML objects, which are xcal, xcard. We use the schema descriptions to generate the code, which creates a library that we can create into another library that is the libcolab, which gives you serialization functions for recurring events, all the things that are very hard to do right, really, really hard to do. Calendaring is surprisingly difficult to do correctly. Everyone thinks, yeah, calendar. But once you look into a global calendar with time zone rules and time zone rules that change, it gets really painful. Trust me. Everyone who's ever looked at calendaring said, this is way more complex than I thought it was. So we wrap a lot of that complexity into the libcolab, which then has bindings to all the languages you might want. Python, PHP, C++, even C squared, Java. I mean, you name it, it pretty much is there or can be added because, I mean, this is just generating the API around the library. So this then gives you a very easy way consistently to read and write into a Kolab server and integrate your Kolab server into other systems purely through IMAP and using the libcolab. Those are the only two components you actually need to touch. So that's why we think this is doing it right, because that IMAP server can be Cyrus or Dovecot. That LDAP server can be anything. You can use different web servers in front. The SQL caches can be virtually anything. We sometimes use a memcached at the moment for the session storage, so the web server can die and you can still have your session alive. The It's not bound to the actual web server individually, which is also very important for scaling this out. Makes a lot of fun. Postfix, of course, can be replaced by exim if you want. I mean, ultimately, if it speaks the standard, it can do the role in the Kolab concept. And that is why we think this actually solves the problem. Okay, enough of the deep down technology. I hope I didn't have anyone too deeply scared now. A few things. One, this is how Kolab looks, or one of the ways in which Kolab looks when you are a desktop user. In this case, on Windows. I deliberately chose this screenshot, of course, because it shows that you can run the KDE PIM client, Contact, on Windows. You could also run it on Mac, but most Mac users prefer the local applications. So most of them, in a Kolab scenario, typically use CalDev, CardDev to use the local Mac applications against the server. Do they prefer it? Fine with me. But generally, KDE PIM, thanks to the portability of Qt. Qt is an incredible technology. It's the only technology that I know has these properties. Qt runs anywhere, and I mean anywhere. The latest BlackBerry phone, the latest in-car systems of quite a few manufacturers, the Linux desktop, Windows, Mac. Qt is an amazingly powerful technology. So we build a lot with Qt, including that client. Kolab has been pushing the PIM development in KDE for a long, long time, and always upstream. Everything goes to the KDE repositories. But of course, we also have a web client. This is the Kolab web client. Some of you may also know it as Roundcube. Roundcube has actually, as a pure web mail application, over 500,000 installations out there. I don't know how many millions of users, but a lot of them. I mean, some of these users, like one site sometimes has 40, 50, 60,000 users. So 500,000 sites makes a lot of users, even if some of them are small. This is our web client that we have developed together with the primary developers since version 2.0.6, I think. So 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.0 all have more than 90% code contribution from Kolab systems, because the primary developers on Roundcube work for Kolab systems, are in fact shareholders of Kolab systems even. And what's noticeable here is that many of you will not have known this even though you're using Roundcube. That is by design. We have very deliberately said Roundcube should remain its own independent project. When we did the licensing change to an AGPL-based license, we deliberately made sure none of the components of the Roundcube ecosystem was negatively impacted. We spoke with them. There's some proprietary hosters there who have proprietary modules. We even built in an exception for them. We would never use that, but they need it. So we deliberately kept them alive and part of the community. And Thomas Brüderli, who is the initial architect and developer of Roundcube, he has the ultimate say always on whether a feature goes into Roundcube main or into one of the Kolab repositories that then provides calendaring, task modules, the file thing, and so on and so forth. He says, I want Roundcube to remain a slim, fast, flexible web mailer for IMAP. We say, that's fine. If that's your project, you run that project as you see fit. And he does that. It's always his call. We say we need to solve a problem. He says, this is how. And so that project runs independently. We are proud and happy to push it so far, and we are glad to see all those installations out there. And of course, our users are very happy to have this web interface, plus with all the added features. And if you have a Roundcube installation now, and an IMAP server in the back end now, you are about this far away from having a full Kolab deployment. Really, really close. It's very few components need to be changed. Virtually nothing needs to be exchanged. You can keep whatever you have right now. So where is all of that used? The largest installation that I know of right now runs in a Fortune 50 that I cannot speak about, so I've brought some others. We have the schools in Basel. Virtually all the public schools in Basel are using our solutions for quite some time now. That's 30-something thousand, 32,000 users. Teachers, administrators, students are in that system. If you go to school in Basel in Switzerland, you have a Kolab account, pretty much, automatically. Very big news for us, of course, is the city of Munich is now switching to Kolab. We are currently working on that. It's a big project that we're having a lot of fun with. What's interesting here is, I mean, this is 40,000 city employees, all the city-owned companies, the entire infrastructure, 14,000 Linux desktops, 1,000 Windows desktops, the rest on the web, with mobiles, the whole mesh, right? The entire complexity that you could possibly have. They chose Kolab because we had a client that runs on all the platforms. It's one of the reasons they chose it. I mean, they have a preference for free software or open source, but very explicitly they did not exclude proprietary solutions in the tender. We know that we were up against some other very proprietary solutions in that bid. And of course, MyKolab, which is an installation that we run ourselves. You might think that's a bit weird, and some people came to us like, that's a bit strange. Why are you're a software vendor, right? Why are you running an installation? Typically, that's not done. Most people don't do this themselves. Well, there's a story to this. The beginnings are 2012, actually. What we had seen is we had refactored Kolab into version 3 that we are having today, into the picture that I've shown you, including a full multi-tenant capability and massive scalability. But we have not seen the take-up in the ASP, ISP field that we thought it should have. You know, we naively thought, build something awesome and they will come. Not quite so. Doesn't always work that way. So simultaneously, we get lots of users who say, I don't want to run my own server. You know, could I just get an account from you or a couple of accounts from you? I just want to host my domain. Can I do this somewhere with Kolab? I want to use Kolab specifically, but no one will give it to me. And I'm not willing to pay myself to run the whole thing, and I don't want the hassle of running a mail server because, well, it's work and time, and you need to be there. So we saw this often enough that we figured, all right, maybe, actually just maybe someone should do this, and maybe if no one else does, maybe we should. So we decided, all right, for Fallsdown 2013, we said, all right, let's declare a public beta. We just set up a server, you know, just single server at that time, right? Literally set up a single server, said, hey, MyKolab beta, you know, everyone sign up. And we made it, you know, fully cost-free as well in the beginning because there was no redundancy, just one server. We couldn't possibly charge for this. We said we're planning to eventually turn this into a paid service, but, you know, let's first see how people like this and what the reaction is. So we decided to put this up and say, you know, guys, try it out. We got a very nice number of signups. You know, the interest was really good. The reaction, the feedback was really fantastic. And we also got great QA out of this. Let's be honest, a fantastic QA. This was the biggest QA effort done on Kolab ever before because suddenly people came with all sorts of random devices that we had never seen before in a Kolab deployment and tried using them against the service. And we found out a lot of things about a lot of devices out there, which was very useful. So it was a good time, and we said, all right, there's something in here. I mean, we can turn this into an actual service because people actually obviously really want this. So we said, all right, cool. If we turn this into a service, let's turn it into the service that we would like to use, the service that we want for ourselves. So what we did is we took the former chief privacy council of Sunrise, which is one of the 3 mobile phone providers in Switzerland, and had him draft for us the terms of services that would be as customer-centric as they could possibly ever be without going bankrupt right away. That was the side condition. But I mean, the risk had to be somewhat mitigated, but it had to be as fair to the customer as we could possibly make it. And then we asked the terms of services didn't read campaign, which we think is very important because people seriously don't read these things that sometimes sign away their second son and stuff like that, or their soul, which actually happened, which I still find hilarious. So we had them evaluate this, and they gave us an A grade. In fact, it's not all that circumstantial, because if they had found anything, we would have changed it. If they had said, nah, this clause, you know, we don't like that, then we would have actually changed it. We had the commitment, we wanted the best possible degree out of this. So it was reviewed. So, you know, we said, all right, now let's really make this for real. In the murky regions of our company group, we found some old unused hardware. Come on, you know how it is, right? You kind of, you know, build, deploy, try. And so we had some old blade centers here from Dell in this case, which weren't in active use. So we said, yeah, we can use this to try it out. Side effect, we had a lot of fun making these things behave as you would have virtual machines behave these days to some extent. So they were, you know, spinning up and down dynamically as you needed them, you know, got their configuration deployed by Puppet, you know, Cobbler, Puppet, that combination we use a lot. So they were really like nicely coming up, you know, what should I be? All right, you're a mail server, all right, get your configuration done. So we've played with these things a bit as a part of the process. Also, again, very nice knowledge to have. So we learned from this, and we had a good time with this. Our only problem, the moment that we carried these, literally the same day that we carried these into the new data center, a certain Mr. Snowden decided to release certain information. And at that time, it became pretty obvious to us that we might not be able to run this as long as we had thought. In fact, we then were caught entirely by surprise when, for instance, PJ shut down Groclaw and announced that she was now with us, and you know that we were her lifeline to the universe, kind of thing. So I mean, I had previously spoken with her on hosting the Groclaw mail services in my Kolab, and so she decided that she would privately move to us when she shut down Groclaw. And we promptly went offline, not the actual service, but the website, because we got completely swamped on the requests. I mean, the VM that was running the Drupal site just ran out of memory, just, you know, died. So immediately people on Twitter were saying, oh, you know, the NSA has shut them down. It was actually rather funny to see. No such thing happened, fortunately. We enjoy actual legal protection in an actually legally sound country, which is very important. But yes, so we've seen this rather massively in our backends. This is the actual storage graph from the IMAP cluster behind this. And while we were happy with the growth all the way to July, that was roughly what we estimated. We thought this would slowly go up, you know. It was not meant to ever be that big. It kind of exploded on us when people realized that running this on a fully open, fully secured way out of a secure data center in Switzerland by a Swiss entity had certain side benefits. And you see some bumps in there where we tweaked the storage parameters to somehow, you know, squeeze more out of what we had. But it's been pretty much going up since then. So we had to go through the entire experience of updating our hardware in production. I mean, we've had to swap it all out. None of the old stuff is running anymore by now. But yes, this has been a bumpy ride that has taught us the value of adaptation and improvement step by step, and has, by the way, also led to some really nice performance improvement in the Kolab stack. Because squeezing that performance out of the solution on that older hardware really allowed us to tweak some of the bottlenecks in a very nice, efficient way. But, and here's where the circle closes, all of this has an inherent backup plan for our users. And that is the community. This is where the circle closes. All of the stuff we do on my Kolab, I mean, the money that people pay on my Kolab partially pays, of course, for the cost of the hosting, but the rest of it goes into actual technology development that is then released again as free software for everyone. So effectively, say Switzerland got insane, created some sort of outrageous laws, you know, we eventually had to go offline. Certainly wouldn't happen overnight. Nonetheless, you know, let's say that's a scenario. This service could start up again with the same properties anywhere. In fact, it can start up in your organization, in your company, in your government today. There's nothing stopping you. And in fact, if you have ever made any sort of investment into Kolab as a technology base for you for the future, you don't have to change your ways of working, your structures, your data set, just because you want to go public cloud or private cloud or want to go to my Kolab or whatever. It doesn't really matter. You can choose the technology and actually migrate to it, knowing that you can control it no matter where it lives. So you do not need to have the ultimate answer to your cloud strategy for, you know, the next 20 years today. Because we believe most people don't. Everyone is trying to figure out which level is right for them right now. That's okay. So we think people should be able to experiment, to adapt and improve their strategies as they go along. So we provide a technology that allows them to do just that. And that is all what I had for you today. Thank you very much.
First of all, your stats are wrong because only me, I have more than 150,000 domains running Roundcube. So your stats are all very wrong. And second, my experience with systems like Kolab is that it doesn't very well work on phones. So what you can tell us about this?
Well, so we test Kolab's ActiveSync capabilities, which is developed in an upstream project called Synchrotron, against all the phones out there. So all the versions of iPhone, iPad, Android, the latest BlackBerry phones, even Outlook 2013 speaks ActiveSync. They all work perfectly fine. I mean, we have thousands of users on my Kolab that prove it every day because they run that stuff. All right, silence in the audience. Ah, here.
Do your customers, do they have to pay the service?
For my Kolab?
Yes.
Yes. We believe in allowing our customers to retain full control and ownership of their own data. In exchange, they pay us in actual money, which is a more transparent transaction because both sides can gauge the value of what it is they're transferring. When you are being data mined, you have no idea of what the margin is and what your value is and what value the company receives from it. With us, you know.
Do they have a right to be included in development of your product?
Yes, but so does everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I just checked your pricing, and you're a bit more expensive than Google Apps, for example. But I guess that means if we decided to self-host the Kolab installation, we could do it, and we could get the data from you in a way where that's possible and practical.
Yes. So so first of all, yes, we are more expensive than, say, Google Apps. There's a bunch of very obvious reasons for this. I mean, one is we lack the secondary monetization. We also don't have the scale of Google, obviously. I mean, Google is still slightly larger than us, just a tiny little bit. Thirdly, we only run everything in Switzerland, right? Switzerland being a very expensive country, especially in the data center realm, electricity is very expensive, everything is expensive. So therefore, we have a higher cost factor that we need to somehow cover.
Yeah.
But let me just finish the last part. But yes, provided that you were running with, say, my Kolab in your own domain, and you said, I now want to host this myself. We've had this case happen before. What you would have at all times is, of course, the IMAP sync, which gives the entire data. I mean, all the data is in there. There's no data missing. And if you ask us for it, we'll even give you your snapshot from the directory service for your users if you want. That's also fine. I mean, doesn't do you all that much good because you need to set up the directory service in the same way, so you're probably easier off setting them up yourself. But heck, you know.
So I guess if I was a larger corporation, we could start deploying our own self-hosted Kolab and then pay you for some support or some kind of integration deals.
Yes, that's exactly what we do.
I try to implement Kolab in our system, but I ditch it because of lack of documentation. Your documentation for administering is aesthetic. There are lots of things missing and to do from version 2 till now. Do you have any plans for documentation?
Well, so I don't know where you have looked, whether you have seen docs.kolab.org, because we get a lot of positive feedback for that. The problem, of course, is that Kolab, by its design, does not strip out any of the optional value of any of the components. And each of these components themselves typically have a pretty big book. So we have the problem that if we wanted a complete documentation of everything you can possibly do with Kolab, you'd end up with a series of books that would cover everything in the postfix book, in the IMAP books, so that's a bit not quite possible for us. So we try to point people towards certain standard practices as much as we can, and then people should ideally look at the documentation from the various components to answer the specific questions that they have. For those who just want to get one server up and running, we have the... Sorry, what?
For administration, installation is covered and components are covered, but when I have a running product, I have almost none documentation for administration. How to do some, let's say, mailing list or alias. I do it in Kolab directly on LDAP server because there's no explanation how to do it from web panel you have built. I know there's way, but there's not. I couldn't find it. It was easier to me to go directly to LDAP and do it there.
Sure. The problem there is, though, that, for instance, the whole distribution list thing is a way more broader thing than most people realize. You have mailing lists that are dynamically resolving into different groups. You have groups that show up in LDAP as well, right? So you can use them as autocomplete groups. You have there's a static translate one email address into a set of other email addresses. The question of what it is that you want to do influences the answer. So does what exactly is the installation that you're running. So giving one answer that would fit all these cases is very hard to begin with, which means that there will always be a certain back and forth between whoever is setting up such an installation and someone who knows Kolab well enough to solve all the problems well. And so there's a certain back and forth that should happen there. However, if you have an idea of how that should be done, I mean, not only is there issues.kolab.org, where you are welcome to contribute, but you're also welcome to contribute to the actual admin panel.
Hello. Can you tell us how you compare your Kolab with competing open source projects and business offerings, for example, like obm.org from Linagora?
So there is a lot of solutions out there, right? I don't know them all in the greatest detail. I know that a large majority of them are, even though they call themselves open, often with proprietary components. So we already have a different approach insofar as we are fully open and free software. Secondly, we are the only ones, to my knowledge, that has this level of security background in terms of architectural security, where you can create defense and death scenarios and things like that, based on a very strong architectural structuring of the server, and this modular approach in terms of allowing every component to be swapped for another, just as you can add additional services, and we plan to add more services, of course, but only as they become ready, because we want to do it right or not at all. So as we add those services, they will enter the core. We have roughly the same functional set, but on a broader spectrum of clients in the end. Our CalDAV, CartDAV stack, to my knowledge, is the best out there, because we have understood very early on that CalDAV and CartDAV are great ideas, but they have one fundamental problem. They rely on the assumption that iCal and vCard are standards. Now, we have made that mistake before, and Kolab 1 was based on that mistake. That is why Kolab 2 came to be with a canonical XML-based format, because the client implementations of iCal and vCard can be dramatically different. So if you're using a solution that is only dumping the objects into some storage and then serving them again without in any way making them canonical, what you have is you have a solution that works with that one version of a client, but not sharing across multiple clients. So what we do is we in fact make it canonical on the server side, store it in XML canonically, and then serve it out with the ability to be able to adapt to the different clients. That's the only way you can do CalDAV, CartDAV in a way that actually allows you to talk to all these clients without screwing up your database. Otherwise, you are left with a database over the years that contains all the cruft from all the different versions of clients that are out there and have been out there for the years. And that's not a situation you want to be in, because cleaning that up is very difficult. So we are a lot better in these aspects, as well as we are the only ones, to my knowledge, who have an actual native client that can replace Outlook.
Any more questions?
Do you have any virtual machine images to download? Do you provide them?
We used to have some occasionally for KVM, I think. I think we haven't made one in a while, but there is instructions on how to install it in like 3 steps or something on a KVM image. So it's really not all that hard. We've deliberately made a setup Kolab command that allows you to get the simplest server running the fastest way on a single machine, because we couldn't possibly create a setup scenario that would allow everything, because everything is just way too big, right? I mean, it's just too complex and too flexible as a solution. But we have a setup Kolab command that allows you to just, fire up a virtual image, add the repository, say setup Kolab, enter your host name and stuff like that, and off you go.
questions? No more questions.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.